Hi Warren, and welcome to part 2 of the Like a Child series. Today's title is God is with me.
Yes.
What does God being with me actually mean, Warren?
So the big Christian term is that God is present with us. So God's omnipresence. But when we speak about God's omnipresence, it doesn't hit home.
Yeah.
So if you had to ask a child, what does that mean if they had to explain it to you? So in childlike terms, you would then say, my God is with me.
Yes.
Because it brings that personal aspect and that comfort that His presence is going to bring. And that's what it means. So to have the faith of a child is to understand that God is with you all the time to bring that comfort.
Why is it so difficult for us to believe that God's presence is constant?
I think it's because we evaluate things on physical terms.
Okay.
So in our humanity, the way that I understand things primarily, so the first part is what I experience.
True.
So how do I understand that somebody is present with me? Well, they have to be with me.
Physically.
They have to physically be with me. So
True.
when you are in my company or we are at the same place, then I use the terms that you are with me. The only time we ever start speaking about like, oh, I feel that that person is with me, is then going into a non-physical realm. So it's their thoughts are with me or their presence is with me. So now when we speak about God being with us, we don't have that first-hand experience that God is physically here. So I think that's part of why we battle with it, because it is a metaphysical thing. It is beyond our human understanding, which is not a problem. It just makes it more difficult for us to grasp it fully.
And that is absolutely true, because to be able to get to a point where you communicate with God, it becomes very difficult when He's not physically there.
Yeah.
Maybe that's my part of thinking of why we struggle to communicate with God. But in general, Warren, with your experiences and obviously with your knowledge, why do you think we struggle to communicate with God, and why is it so difficult for us to actually receive from God?
Okay, so firstly, if there was one thing that I know that we battle with as human beings,
Yes.
so on all levels, in all relationships, it is communication. So you speak about a marriage relationship. What would make a marriage relationship far better if there was communication? You speak about a friendship, communication.
True.
You speak about the work environment, communication. So it's not new.
Yes.
The fact that we battle with communication. Now you have to put in, we're not used to the presence being non-physical.
True.
And now we have to do something that we are already not
Uncomfortable
that
with.
good with, which is communication. So those two things, it's going to be a bit of a struggle, and we understand that. So with that, why do we battle to receive from God? And I think that one is a different thing. I think that's more got to do with the pride and ego, and I want to prove something. So we often will not want to receive from people because it makes us seem weaker.
Yeah, that's true.
It makes us seem dependent,
Vulnerable.
and we want to be strong. We want to be independent. We want to do things on our own because in some way we think that proves a point. Now, all of that, to a certain degree, is fine on human terms. But as soon as you take it to the divine, then it's completely different. Because for us to say, I want to be independent of God, you can't. So God wants you to depend on Him. I want to be strong. Well, God knows that you're weak and that you are at your strongest when you are relying on Him. So when we get to our wanting to receive from God, it's a whole different scenario. And instead of us being filled with pride and ego, which I'm glad that us not being able to receive from God shows us the pride and the ego. Because how many times, Anela, do we battle with something? and we don't want to let go.
True.
We don't want God to actually help us because we're trying to prove a point to ourselves that I'm strong enough. I have the ability. I'm smart enough. I'm emotionally mature enough. I'm secure enough. Whatever the issue is. And we're having this with God. And God's like, I think you need to get real. Like, let's just be honest about the situation here and realize you need to depend on me because that's where your true strength lies.
True. That is so profound, Warren. You know what? It's so eye-opening for me, and it's going to be so eye-opening for so many people. To conclude this conversation, Wara, what value is there in knowing that God is with me?
It's unfathomable.
Yo.
It's off the charts. It's literally, it's as high as the heavens are from the earth. Every single time I stop and I think about this, I never get to a conclusion because I can't. How do I put into words that the God of the universe, the creator, the most powerful being is in me, is with me all the time? How do I understand it? I can't begin to understand it. I think, again, because I experience my own limitations. So I'm in a physical world that has limitations. So now for me to fully believe in the depth of my being that God, who is unlimited, is within me. And I have His presence with me constantly. It is the most beautiful thing. And if I just rely on that, if I am conscious of His presence with me, you know what we're talking about?
Yeah.
We're talking about David.
True.
David standing in front of Goliath. We're talking about whatever my issue is, whatever my problem is, whatever I'm struggling with right now is so small. Why? Because God is with me. And if He is with me, what in the world could ever be against me? So not only is He for me, but He's literally there with me. And I mean, that's just phenomenal. It's so comforting and encouraging, and yet in the same breath frustrating because I don't rely on it as much as I need to. And that's the area of growth, is that I need to be more conscious of God's presence in my life and to be able to understand that He is truly always with me.